I'm gonna stand right here though. Is that cool? You can't see me. Peter's gonna stand there.
Well, okay, take a look.
As long as I don't.
It's kind of like
Looks good to me.
you know.
I'm cool as long as you're cool.
Like it's not great with the slides. Like I need to get a better camera for that. And I think I'm gonna get like a DSLR. Since I have a capture box, I'm gonna mirror HDMI from DSLR camera that has a nice zoom, a nice contrast, a nice everything. And then I'll just use that. And I can like pick one up like $400.
Nice.
Like an older DSLR. I don't need like top of the line. I can go like older.
Yeah, because you're just piping it through anyway.
Exactly.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for doing it.
Live.
What's that?
We are live.
We are
I'll
live.
just let it stream for now. And then
Oh yeah, where is Behl?
You know what? Why don't you just go right behind me? And then all you guys can just switch in. Feel free to turn sideways. And we're going to like each other. Yeah, perfect. Alright, that's perfect, guys. There's 1, 2, 3.
the lighting, like bright daylight.
I know, right?
Check, check, check. Hey, hey, hey. How's everybody doing out there? Hey, Thrill, can you guys hear me back there? All right, awesome, awesome. You guys want to come? There's a couple seats up front. Get ourselves settled in. We got a great night of programming, some great content to provide for you. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Dave Fredericks. I'm one of the organizers here. And you know, you guys are at G2 Technologies. We want to thank our gracious hosts, Glenn Grant, over the corner right there. Glenn, throw your hand up. CEO and founder. For those who don't know what G2 Technology does, definitely have a conversation. You guys can see the members in the back over there. You want to raise your hand? All these guys can talk to you. They do a lot of really cool stuff. Can provide some really good solutions from anyone in the enterprise space. If you guys don't know Dustin Collins, obviously right here, my co-organizer. We're the ones who put these events together. We're really looking to bring the community together, talk about a lot of the challenging issues that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, and hopefully, the objective is through some of the case studies and some of the dialogue, each of you guys can leave with some really good ideas to bring back into your organizations on what works, what doesn't, and if it doesn't, why, but what you learn from that. Really excited to kick this event off, all about habits, behavioral, best practices, because when we really look at it at the end of the day, it isn't about the technology, all right? It's about the people, all right? 99% of technical problems tend to be, people problems. And I made that up in my head. And 90% of all statistics are made up on the spot. Thanks, Dustin, for calling that out. So I have a couple quick announcements for some of our partners who are involved within the community, just to talk about some of the events that they have going on. First, I want to bring up Anastas. Where's Anastas? He's actually the one who takes care of doing all of our video and streaming it online. So anyone who wasn't able to make it today can still take part with the content. So Anastas is one of the organizers for Container Days. He's bringing it back to Boston for the second year at the Nerd Center. Is he here? Where'd he go? All right, looks like I was going to speak for him, but I'm not exactly certain as to the date. So we're gonna shift it real quick. I want to introduce Tom. Tom's with CloudBees. If you guys don't know that organization, big Jenkins shop, but he's him and Dr. David Yates will be starting up a new meetup for Jenkins users. So he wants to talk a little bit about that. Obviously, as it aligns with what we do.
Thank you, Dave. It's nice to see everyone tonight. So as Dave mentioned, we're starting a new Jenkins area meetup group, and it's going to be, our first meeting is going to be on March 8th at 7 p.m. at Plug Cambridge, which is a new co-working facility in Cambridge. I have free passes to the facility if anyone is looking for a co-working spot, and just see me. And our first event is going to be on plugin as code, which is a groovy DSL inside Jenkins that lets you model your CD pipeline. And so it's the future of Jenkins, and it should be a great meetup. We'll have pizza. Plug is right next to a liquor store. We'll have lots of fun. And I have some Jenkins stickers to give out, and I have bobbleheads and t-shirts, and so we should have a real fun time. So that's it.
Okay. Awesome, Tom. Thank you so much. So if you guys got that, if you had any questions on exactly what they're doing, he's going to be here all night. Definitely reach out. I want to do now, Dustin's going to talk a little bit about an event that we all hold very close and dear, and it's going to be a great announcement.
Anyone heard of DevOps Days?
Yeah. Who hasn't?
How many to DevOps Days? This year we'll be in Boston. We're going to be doing it Late August,
No, it's actually confirmed
25th and 26th of August. And we'll have the CFPs and tickets open in a month or two. So start thinking about what you want to talk about. We really want to focus on having people local to the community come and talk and share what they know. Anything else on that?
If anybody has any questions or wants to talk about it or ideas to share with us, you have the organizers right here.
That's,
Peter Nealon.
yeah. So Peter Nealon, got Cody, raise your hand. Miles, James, Dustin, myself, and our friend Jared, who's actually in Hawaii right now, so he's probably waving from some kind of area out there. But please feel free to come meet with one of the organizers, and if you guys have any questions, curious as to what it is, we are going to be at the Park Plaza in downtown Boston. We're really looking to hold a bigger event this year than in prior years. Last year had a great event, great content, phenomenal 2 days of teaching and learning. The issue is we ran out of tickets 2 months before the event. We had over 200 people on a wait list, and one of the things we really identified this year is we don't want that to happen again, right? Because when you have that kind of interest and demand, obviously people want to have conversations. They really want to discuss some of the challenges. So this year we're bringing it back to Boston, and we're really looking to run a world-class event, and it's all about engineers to engineers and talking about problems, man. So it should be really awesome.
So one immediate takeaway is if you want to go, you should totally bring your whole team, and now would be a great time to start talking to your manager about what it's going to take to buy like 5 tickets or 10 tickets, because as soon as those go on sale, people are going to start buying them.
How much tickets?
That's not decided yet, so we will let you know.
Probably about 10 times less than DockerConf. Roughly.
Yeah, so Anastasis is here. He's going to talk about container days.
You guys know what Container Days is? All right, you do a brief description.
Hey guys, Container Days is a unconference in Boston. Started, I think the first one was in Austin, Texas. This will be our second Container Days in Boston. There was Austin, Texas, then Boston, then Container Days New York in October last year, and it's coming to Boston again. May 25th and 26th, which is, I think, Tuesday and Wednesday. So mark your calendars. Tickets are $50. There are still tickets left. Go to containerdays.org or dynamicinfodays.org to check out the program. We have fantastic speakers. We'll be very happy to see you all. Bring your container questions, bring your success stories, bring your failure stories, and hopefully that will help you implement containers in development, production, and all over the place. Thank you.
Anastasis, thank you. All right, now without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to Glenn Grant, CEO of G2 Technologies, our gracious host, to talk about what we're going to be launching today, all right? Here he is.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. All right. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. All right, cool. Well, I also have here Peter Nealon.
Nice to meet you all. I'm a senior solution team lead here at G2.
And a little bit of a leprechaun sometimes as well.
Yeah. Don't try to steal my lucky charm.
I haven't found his pot of gold, but it's out here somewhere.
I won't tell
Before
you.
we get started, too, we got 5 seats up here, 3 seats up here. If anybody wants to sit down, cool. If not, no problem. All right.
It's not the splash zone. It's okay.
Yeah.
This isn't a bar show. It's not the splash zone.
Cool. So today we're going to be talking about our journey to an Agile DevOps Desk. So G2, we are a managed DevOps provider for small businesses, startups, small enterprises, SaaS companies most of the time. And we're experts in AWS. So we've been traveling through the world of reactive support and proactive support, and have rebooted our service desk, and are here to share with you our journey. Not saying it's the only way, but hey, it's all about sharing here at the community. So,
And even some of our trials and tribulations.
Yes, there are plenty of tribulations. So the business story we're trying to solve. We came from an existing ops-focused reactive support world, a managed IT company. Our knock and help desk models were generally fix-it requests. In the old school model, work was generally done, proactive work was generally done as a project, kind of isolated, basically because most of the time it required ordering hardware and rolling out and windows of downtime, whatever. But as we all know, our world's drastically different than it used to be back then, which was like 2 years ago. Today, over 65% of our daily requests are now DevOps work versus IT ops work. We still get plenty of those, both from old customers and DevOps customers. There's still IT and ops issues. In the DevOps world, the proactive is becoming the new normal of reactive. There are many more work orders that are not fix it, but rather build it yesterday, now, please. And we're still providing monitoring and on-call services for those customers, so there's still plenty of actually truly reactive work too.
And this is an area where, that classical, DevOps model where we're part of, the value proposition of, both, our customers and the development teams that make up those things. And that's where that shift from really break-fix work into build it, is the focus of, G2 and the value that we provide to our clients.
So we realized we needed to kind of reboot how we ran our service desk, help desk, knock, whatever you want to call it. Things coming in, things need to go out. We needed to build the DevOps desk, whatever the hell that is, right? Because we're kind of making it up as we go along. And we needed visibility into different types of work, and appropriate balance between the planned and the unplanned work. So you might say, how does this affect me? So you might be trying to introduce DevOps to your organization. Maybe that lone wolf DevOps person that managed to score that job because DevOps is so cool now everybody needs to have it, so they hired you. And they don't know what it means, and you're like, oh, well, I got some ideas, but let's see if I can get a DevOps team. Time. You need a DevOps organization. And that DevOps is a state of mind, man. It's not a job. It's not a department. It's all of us, which is somewhat true. But it might be easier if you're only supporting a single organization or just one application or a single workflow. And we don't have that luxury. We have a lot of small business clients, and they all are doing things uniquely, and they're innovating and coming up with new ideas and throwing new stuff at us all the time. So if you're in the enterprise, this could be relevant too. There are many applications and business units, which is kind of analogous to the way that G2 has a bunch of customers. Some of those different business units or applications are going to embrace DevOps, and their teams are going to embrace that more quickly. Other ones are going to move more slowly. There's plenty of waterfall still to be enjoyed out there. Not all the DevOps teams are going to convert overnight, and there's going to be some legacy apps that are going to have some legacy staff, and nobody's going to touch them or change them until their end of life, then people retire.
Well, what I love to point out here is there's plenty of ops people that are going to be the impediment to these sorts of, migrations as well. So let's not single out, just the developers. There are some, curmudgeon, sysadmins out there that are not going to necessarily buy into this, and buy into the, new world order that we're talking about.
But I know some people here tonight have experienced this, maybe working in a local enterprise that had some troubles adapting DevOps and maybe had to move on and adapt themselves. Can't get everybody to follow suit, so. All right, so we're a service provider, we mentioned that, but we have many clients. All these clients have different teams, they got different things going on, their apps have different quirks, they've got HA proxy crammed in all sorts of unique corners of the world, all sorts of special surprises. We needed a single workflow that could accommodate all of our clients. And we needed to accommodate, the basic buckets of planned and unplanned work, proactive and reactive, and try to make everybody happy at the same time, which Peter does easily.
Easily, all the time. Anyone who knows me knows that, I keep everyone happy, especially my wife. She definitely would never disagree with that.
So we needed that system that our clients could understand and embrace, a proven system that could allow us to make decisions quickly, and more importantly, the team to make decisions themselves and not always have to ask, whoever's in charge, what should we do now? A proven system would be nice. So we figured, why reinvent the wheel? And we chose Agile because it made sense, and because I was making it Peter's problem, and that's what he said we should do.
Well, and I've had a great deal of success with running Agile teams from a software development perspective, but also being the ops person embedded into an Agile software development team, and the idea that we could actually plan and visualize our work and actually, not just go from tire fire to tire fire, was a revelation. And I've seen this work both on the ops side of things as well as the software dev side of things. And it's an opportunity for for operations to here at G2 to provide additional value to our software development partners that are our clients.
So our clients are already using it. They're developing software that way,
So we know all we need to know right now to build our software.
I've got the Uber of whatever, and it's already done.
Now we'll sit in a room and I'll do it all by myself. It's totally fine. I don't need to talk to anybody.
So it makes sense to them. We're speaking the same language, and we were able to kind of leverage that. They know what sprint means. So when they're like, I need this now, we can say, well, that's not in this week's sprint. And they go, damn it, I'm not allowed to cram stuff in the sprints either. But we're a service provider, so we can say, well, what would you like to take out of your sprint this week to put that in, or whatever. But, we're speaking the same language that, we can kind of get it, and we can kind of align ourselves with how the teams are working, keep the workflow moving. So if you're a believer in the gospel of the Phoenix Project, how many believers are out there? All right. It's a great story if you haven't read it. It really hits home with, moving the parts through that warehouse to get it to the other side. We got to get from one end of the plant to the other. And Agile was created by people that are a lot smarter than we are. So, hey, let's just bastardize it, boil it down, try and use it. So a distinction here that I want to make is, I've done my research. There's the Agile software development process, and then there's Agile process management. So an iterative, incremental method of managing and designing the build activities for engineering, information technology, other business areas that aim to provide a new product or service development in a highly flexible, interactive manner. I totally want to do that. So let's do that.
Let's all do it. Come on.
So, it doesn't 100% translate. So, we went Beastie Boys on it, and we took our favorite samples, and we dropped some funky beats on it, and we made some gold records. And we took sprints, Kanban-ish, we'll get to that, stand-ups and retrospectives. Those were, the low-hanging fruit that made sense after we sat down and said, let's try to use Agile to solve our problems. We're like, that. So Kanban-ish. So we live in a ticket world, not a user story world. It's a little different. Tickets have different statuses, and we sat down. We tried to make swim lanes and put things through. The pool had like 50 lanes. So we really looked at the basic principles of the Kanban and Agile, and it started, not started, in progress, and done. We added a new tier because we have brand new things coming in. And then we sort of wrapped our head around, we have these different kind of statuses that all fit into the starters bucket.
Well, and this is one of the interesting things about working for both a consultancy and a managed service provider is that we're not a fully integrated team. We, as much as we work directly with our clients, there are instances where there are things that have to go back and forth, and we're waiting for our clients to do something on their end or provide us with the additional information that we need in order to do this thing. So we have this different sort of collection of statuses and even swim lanes of sorts because of the business that we operate and the way that we operate with our clients. And this is a perfect example of how we sort of Beastie Boy'd the Agile process, because we picked the things that made sense and worked for our business, and made it adaptable and workable with our clients.
And once we got our heads wrapped around the fact that you could go, we started forward. Yes, as much as it's the CEO, I'm like, go. I want to complete it. Done. Let's do it. So sprints. So our ticket queues are kind of like whole different swimming pools, and they got their own lanes. And we broke it down. We had different queues where tickets went to die, and that, you open up and there's like 765 monitoring alerts nobody cares about. It's like warning, Active Directory. Oh, who cares? So we redesigned our queues, made these different swimming pools, and we have a funnel where things are coming into different inboxes, we call them, that we're kind of sweeping out and sorting. We're doing it manually, and then we're identifying what we can automate, and then automating that piece.
Well, what we were trying to solve here was that we had a problem with visualizing the work that needed to be done and even prioritizing that work. And this was a way to, sort of reorganize and really focus on identifying the work that needs to be done in a given period of time, even a given day, and then all of the new work that's, continue, or all of the new requests that are, constantly coming in from all of our clients.
Right. So now we can look at them, they come in, they either go to the backlog, which will then work its way to the sprint, or they go straight to today because, hey, some stuff needs to get done now. This alert went off, this request came in, we got to get it done. As much as we want to put no new tasks in the sprint, we're not going to hold up our client's development process, and if they forgot to ask us something, like I need this critical piece so that I can do my job, it's like, oh, you have to wait till next week. That's not going to fly, so we got to get in today. So we're roughly trying to balance the capacity so that we got 65 to 75% of our capacity planned for sprint work, premeditated, awesome. And then we've got 25 to 35 capacity for the unplanned firefighting stuff that the ops world, that we live in, continues to have. So stand-ups. So our stand-ups are focused on our today's queues and our inboxes. We look at the sprint too, but we've kind of already figured that out in the sprint planning. And team gets together, 15 minutes every morning. Are we working on the most important things? Can I trade some tickets with you because you're working on this client today anyway, or you know something more about it? And we're working towards that philosophy of the scrum style, agile, self-managing group. But we're still struggling with that a little bit because we haven't figured it out yet. We haven't made it second nature, so you can't just kind of self-figure it out because we're changing every week. So.
We haven't developed all of that muscle memory yet to fully implement that self-management of a team, but that's ultimately where we're pushing towards.
So retrospective, this is my favorite meeting of the week now. It's my group therapy for IT. I love it. Get in. We've taken a couple of different things from some other things I've learned in entrepreneurs circles about meetings and stuff. So we start with the one word open and we end with the one word close, which is cool because somebody can start off with frustrated and at the end they're like relieved. They're like, awesome, we did a good job today.
I'm going to go with wizardly myself.
Wizardly. I'm going to go with droid right here. All right, so we just start off with our reviewing our weekly KPIs. We're trying to decide what matters to us in that meeting. It's generally right now how many tickets came in, how many did we close, how many do we still have open. We want to see that we made some progress or see that we're losing ground. Do we need to hire somebody? Do we need to get more organized? We got to measure something. If you can't measure it, it won't get done. The next piece is the on-call pager person weekly recap, so they get to their therapy time. This is how my week went. Nobody likes to say they had a good week because then you're like, screw it.
A little venting as well as the all-important let's refactor our process. What are the things that were good? Did we screw up a bunch of thresholds on alert? People up for this has been a really valuable part of our tuning process. That's will be ongoing as anyone here who works in operations and deals with this knows. You're never going to nail all of your monitoring stuff, so you should probably talk about it every week.
So not only are we getting updates on who's got a dumpster fire this week and what happened with that customer, and who might need a project to kind of fix that and get off the self-compiled Ubuntu that they're running on Amazon. Little things like that. But also just the alert turn. Prior to that, in my experience, I've been doing outsourced IT for 15 years. About every 6 months or so, there's the pager rebellion. And we all freak out and we have to get together and fix it. Because when you're in the heat of battle, you just hit snooze on stuff. and we're not talking about it as we go and making tweaks. And now every Friday we're like, yeah, that alert sucks and it's useless. It's like, let's turn it off. But when you're just on duty, you're like, until it builds up and pager fatigue and meltdown. So that's been cool. And then the good, bad, start, stop. Just go around the room. You know, what was good this week? What was bad? What should we start doing? What should we stop doing?
This is personally my favorite part of retrospectives because it gives us that opportunity to be really honest, as a group about the things that and practices that are good and bad, and what are the things that we as a group need to start doing, or like what do we need to stop doing, which is like, hey, let's not just snooze alerts, if we think that they're, erroneous, let's actually deal with them and, figure out how to make them go away, right? But this is, that honesty part, like, let's look each other in the eye and call a spade a spade.
Yeah, or that thing that Glenn made in the ticketing system last week that he thought was really cool is lame and is more work. We should not do it.
That never happens.
That never happens. I'm like, it was Sunday night and it's wine. It's not like a good idea at the time. Let's make more field. Next thing we do is who's going to be on call next? Who's the lucky person who is getting the on-call handed off, and then who's going to come up the two behind that? That's Scott in the back, and then I say, all right, any of you guys scheduled for PTO? And you're like, oh yeah. I'm like, that's a problem. We should probably not do that the day you realize that you're going to Disney World with a pager in your pocket. Always makes the significant others really happy. And then, are there any planned outages? Anybody going to screw up this person's week? You're going to break something? You're going to pull the plug on anything? We're all very, very, very good at setting downtime for everything.
Always. We never forget.
Never forget. And then we wrap up with the one-word close. And that's been, like I said, my favorite meeting of the week since we.
I'm going with hugs.
Yeah, he's a great hugger.
Yeah. It's true. He's a great hugger too. If anyone wants a hug, I'm offering.
Line up, get your hoodie over there, and then a hug.
That's what we need is tickets for hugs.
The hug raffle is coming up after the presentation. So things that we still need to solve. Different SLA response times. Like there's different things that have different priority. We've got our eyes on stuff and you can see it, and as a human you can process it. But how do we kind of get that automated, and how do we get it tagged right as much as we can so that we can balance that unplanned work? This probably way. Task time estimation. How long are these tickets? Are they 1, 2, 4 hour tickets? Sprint. I don't know how long this thing's going to take. Visualization of the work without a real Kanban. We've got a couple tools we're looking at. Once we get our sort of ticketing straight, we can use APIs to see it, but I can see it like the Matrix, but Peter's like, no, we need an actual Kanban.
Look at it.
Like, here's a marker and some Post-its. Go to. Tracking your work. We're a professional services firm. Anybody out there in a professional services firm ever worked for one? All right, one. You got to bill your time. Otherwise, you're leaving money on the table. Or the customer's like, what do you do for my fixed fee? I'm like, I need to show you. So as IT folk, we're kind of wired to fix the problem, not really necessarily write a story about it. So that's still a challenge. Tickets versus user stories. We're ticket driven, but a lot of the software dev is user story. How do we reconcile those two things? Sometimes they're easy, sometimes they're not.
Yeah, and how do we make sure that either we're writing user stories or we're working with our clients in order to write user stories that include all of the acceptance criteria and all of the things that we need to know in order to be able to develop whatever or provide whatever the thing is that our clients need.
Self-organizing teams, trying to work towards that, and then Peter's favorite.
Yeah, I mean my favorite thing, which I don't know if raise your hand here if you've solved your problem of limiting work in progress.
I just shut down servers and pull
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Overachiever.
And all the places that I've worked, which is 1 or 2 or more than that. This is a continued battle. It's easy to get work into the in progress phase, but then there's inevitably something that trips you up and you move on to something else, and you end up with all of this work that's in progress that's stacked up and doesn't make its way all the way through to the done column where everyone can feel good about their week, their 2 week, their 4 week, whatever their different durations.
So Q&A, we got a little over on time, but we got about 5 minutes. Overachiever in the back.
Can I read any of Peter's user stories? I feel like it'd be really good.
Maybe I should just start
Just blog
publishing
it.
them.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
I'll take up live tweeting them. They'll be in 140 characters.
Yep, right there.
Okay, so one of the biggest annoying things you guys probably face is capacity planning, because you already pointed out you don't know how to point stuff, and sometimes the user will call and say this thing broke, and you're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. You have to go look into it, write a story, point it, decide. So that whole thing is really amorphous sometimes. So like you probably haven't solved it yet, but like how are we supposed to solve these things?
So how are we supposed to solve capacity planning when we don't really know what the issue is? That is on our list.
Yeah, I mean that's part of building in the overhead time for that sort of reactive work that has to happen. So, how we're trying to approach it is, planning our sprints, the planned work to a minimum to give us the maximum amount of overhead.
What I'm saying is like that one thing they called in is like, holy crap.
Yeah.
That one thing is like, our whole system over here is broken because this
That cuts the line.
Yeah. You know?
That goes straight in.
Yeah,
So what we're
But it's not just the thing, but let's say you guys had an issue that, cascades into a lot of areas. So all of a sudden, this one ticket you thought was a 2 is now like.
For the when you do a huge amount of engineer time, you inevitably end up trumping other work that was planned for the week, and part of that is a communication issue to be dealt with clients to make sure that you're managing the expectations.
And then we pitch them a CI/CD project, and then they'll test their crap before they put it in production. Mick.
So I have a question. You said you wanted to move towards scrums for self-managed teams, which is fine in terms of managing the sprint.
Yep.
One of the problems I've always had, I've always chosen Kanban, or what I used to call McBan, because it was a completely bastardized version of it.
I like Scrumban, but
But
Scrum bags.
The real reason for Kanban is that it allows interrupts.
Yes.
But that's also, which is necessary for ops, but it's also a necessary evil.
Yeah, I mean, so
what I wanted to ask is how, so you've got this continuous now queue.
Yeah.
Which I imagine there's a real struggle to stop that from getting bigger than the actual sprint.
Yes.
And then,
constantly.
And then
Never
related to that, how do you, unless you've got some perfect team that gels together and has zero selfish motives, you're going to get cherry picking off that now queue.
Sure.
So people wanted to do the
Yeah,
right
so
thing.
we talk about that every week because I'm bad cop and I'm like, cherry pickers. And he's good cop. And he's like, we can do this. And I'm like, we will figure it out eventually. But it's one of the struggles. And also the balancing the sprint queue. So the one number that we kind of watch that's relative to that is we put tickets in. I'm still waiting for the week where the sprint queue says 0 tickets at the end of the week. And then I'll know that we've kind of found some sort of balance.
Yeah, we can get there.
We're getting closer. We're in single digits.
Or you need more customers.
Yeah, there you go. Sir, there.
Are you guys doing like whip limits or for WIMPs, or are you guys actually, in the Kanban, are you guys actually setting thresholds, or are you still kind of like, kind of going along with Mick's saying too? Like, you're still just trying to figure out like how much you're gonna have like in each lane. You know what I mean? So you don't overcommit.
Yeah, so some of that's a continued work in progress. To also talk about work in progress. So no, we don't have limits as to what can be how many tickets can be in a in progress state, and part of that's driven by, you saw in one of the slides, the number of different states that would be considered in progress, but are essentially like paused, waiting for further input.
So you try to still keep how many, right? You said for each lane, the limit, right? You don't want to get too much, and then by 10, get to the end of the week or 2 weeks, however you guys do it, you're like,
right,
ooh, we only moved like 2 tickets to the end.
Well, they move through. It's just what piles up. So we're starting to add some automation to that. So like waiting on a client, that's starting to stack up. So I started automating another queue where it sweeps it out and then nags them 3 days in a row every 24 hours and says, your ticket's now closed. So I'll have to make a similar one about progress pause where it gets escalated to me or Peter and says, hey, this thing's been stuck. Let's go find the DevOps engineer that has it and find out what their blocker is. Maybe they're just kind of stuck.
Yeah.
So we're more so trying to figure out workflows around keeping the machine moving.
Well, you got a question back here.
In the back, sir. Yeah, that's a good question. We haven't really had a problem there yet because we're doing just the real high level stuff that makes sense and we're not meddling with how they're going to develop their software. We're just kind of trying to align parallel processes.
So I think that just answered mine, which is if a customer was standing up there with you, would they say the transition is easy, hard, good, bad, no change for them?
I think it's no change for them. They're really still throwing it over the fence.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just that now on the other side of the fence we have a conveyor belt that hopefully takes it through the bagel slicing machine. And you guys remember that bagel slicing machine? It was really cool. We're going to do 2 more right here.
You said that you had a sprint
Yep.
and a today queue.
Yeah.
Is that the same people?
Yeah, it's all the same people.
Sure.
And the pacers also in that mix?
Yeah.
So they're a dedicated
Rock and roll.
Yeah.
We're a small company.
And we're sort of approaching this as it's all work that has to get done. Yeah, so whether it's planned work or reactive work, it's still that pile of work that clients are expecting to, be completed. Whether it's, my application's on fire, or hey, I've got this, planned project to, put in a, CI pipeline.
How does that work for the items that people sign up in the sprint?
So that's kind of the daily
so
stand-up is, hey, I've got 1 or 2 tickets out of the sprint. I got some room for a couple of these reactives, so that we get everybody to have the opportunity to work on the project stuff that's fun, and everybody's got to fight fires and stay sharp. So try to balance that at the beginning of every morning.
Is it completely democratic, or do you guys assign stuff as well?
It's indirect democracy.
A fascist socialist sort of state.
So you volunteer people do.
I do volunteer.
Yeah.
There's a lot of volunteer. One more back here, and then we're out of time.
You mentioned the slide the difficulty of tracking time and hours accurately, and have you ever encountered where you have one person working on like 4 different tickets in the course of an hour, closing them all out, get these quick fixes, and then it's like, well, shit, what did I just do for the last hour, and how do I build that if they're all clients?
Yeah.
And how have you guys solved that issue? Or is it just estimating?
So, it's a problem. We're working on essentially templates, speed codes, making it as brainless as possible to be like, I did it. As much canned stuff there so they can focus on doing the fixing or building and not so much, again, logging it, writing the stories. Cool. Well, thank you guys very much. This is a lot of fun. We'll be around if you guys want to chat. We're going to take a little break. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Peter, for helping me with this.
Yeah,
we're going to take a little break. I'm going to do a little raffle, grab some more food or whatever, and then Jeff from LogicMonitor is going to come up next.
Guys, that was great job. Like I was waiting for one of you guys to just freeze up and just look like a statue.
Thanks, dude.
I wouldn't know too much, but
Yeah, I know. You're like, man, you know what? That guy just
Generally has love music.
Are you going to use this?
Yes. Here, I'll come after you. We have a special guest coming up. Help us with our raffle. A close personal friend of mine, Ben Solo, is here tonight. Everybody, Ben Solo. Here, Ben. So I don't know if any of you guys have had the pleasure of seeing Ben's Twitter account. You can follow him at emo Kylo Ren.
I put together a short presentation on my feelings on the Force, DevOps, and automations. Some of you might know me by my true name, Kylo Ren. I have a bad feeling about this. I have a lot of feelings about this. I have a lot of feelings about it. Current status is sarlactic, but emotionally. I've been making a playlist of songs that remind me of Darth Vader. So far, it's every song. You can't truly appreciate the Imperial March until you hear it on vinyl. I wonder when I'm going to lose my first hand. It should be soon. Do you feel like Han Solo is the father you never had? Me too. That's why he's over there. In case of carbonite. My dad says he's glad not to be from Tatooine. Because he couldn't have dealt with 2 sons. How do I unsubscribe from this family? I wasn't crying in the shower. I just realized I'll never get to meet Darth Vader. And then some soap got my eye. Because we're in the waiting long. What's the word for when your father is frozen in carbonite, but emotionally for your whole childhood? Anyone know what the word is?
Puberty.
That's harsh. I'm really glad my voice is different in this mask. Uncle Lando said my helmet made me look like a depressed lich. Everyone laughed. You can't even see my Darth Vader light up seekers. I mean, what's the point?
Well, thank you, Ben. Thank you very much for sharing your feelings with us tonight. So we're going to be raffling off Ben's lightsaber.
I'll miss this.
Katie, we got the fishbowl back there.
Almost there.
Oh, well, somebody's holding it up. Who is it?
I will find them.
Whoever that is not going to win.
Yeah. I might win. Just take this back.
Did you make that yourself?
Yeah, that's why it's so badass. These extra side ones really, tactically, you can't beat that. I'm out of hands. I can't I also probably can't beat it in this mask.
Alright, let's see who we got here. Peter Jolson? Peter Jolson? Alright, Peter! There you go!
I'll keep it in one.
May the force be with you, sir. Everyone, why don't you come up and get a picture with the
You're broken.
Alright, Alright, cool. Thanks, everyone. We'll get started in a few minutes. Thank you, Ben. We should have taken more of these. We should trade notes. Do you want to click?
We said scrum, we tried to do it really pretty, like 60 minutes.
You do 60.
Yeah, I try to get the on-call guy less. I figure he's
Yeah, I'm actually trying to get to a point where the on-call guy kind of someone sitting behind me or something. That's kind of exactly like, hey, wake up, work proactive. I don't want you to hate me.
Why are you crouching? Because I don't want this thing in the way. Trying to get a good angle too. Yeah, it makes it be better. I'm really good at this.
All right, everybody, we're gonna get moving here. I'd like to introduce Jeff Behl, Chief Awesome Enterprise Architect Genius, LogicMonitor, close partner of G2.
Guys, lay your back. Lay your back. On the back, you hear me? That guy doesn't hear me.
Alright everyone, it's time for our second talk of the night. We have Jeff from LogicMonitor talking about taking an app from manual build and deployment to continuous build and automated deployment.
Testing. You hear me?
Can you guys hear him?
Yeah. Good enough? Yeah. All right. All right. So this is going to be kind of wide-ranging to some degree, in that we're going to go over how we took one of our apps to full automatic deployment. Yeah. My name is Jeff Behl. I'm the Chief Network Architect at LogicMonitor, which is a fancy way of saying I'm in charge of operations at the company. It started in 2008, about 145 employees. We have data centers, physical ones in DC area, Los Angeles, London, and a number of AWS regions. We are hybrid as much as I'd rather not be, but that's just the way of the world. It's not just to be buzzword compliant. What we're doing is I started about 2011. We were only 5 employees at that time, so most of the growth has been over the last few years. Quick 20,000-foot view of the architecture, just so you know where I'm operating from. You install a collector into your data center. Your cloud environment can be private, can be public. It can be a branch office, monitor printers. We don't care. Our tenet is that everything should be monitored if it's part of your application stack. If you're in IT and your application stack is your CEO's printer, it should be monitored. You should get an alert on that. A little on my background when I think of operations is this is generally my 3 horsemen for operations. We have monitoring, log management, and configuration management. Monitoring, obviously I'm a big fan of LogicMonitor. We use ourselves to monitor ourselves, but we have to do it from multiple locations, which kind of stinks, and our customers don't have to do that. I don't mention the app dynamics and the new relics there. We do use tools like that in our environment, but I consider that more on the debug level. It's not the type of tool that I would use. For log management, I think that's a totally different science. We use Sumo Logic, fans of them, they work great. It's a SaaS-based service, don't have to deal with my own infrastructure. We're a SaaS service, we like SaaS services. Splunk's out there if you have a lot of money. Elf's out there if you have a lot of time. And then we get into the configuration management of things. We currently use Puppet for configuration management of the machines. We actually still use it for our app configuration, but I'm really hating that more and more. We use Ansible for deployment, and everything is in Git. It has to be in source control. Monitoring, a few tenets on that, which I see is that everything should be in monitoring, everything. The credo that I have with the group that works underneath me is it can break once, it's fine, just never again. And after you've done that for long enough, you really should have a really stable environment. I think there's a lot of attention to be paid to the amount of monitoring tools we have. The more you can reduce that, just the less silos you're going to have. This is really in the DevOps space, meaning if you got your network guy, your storage guy, and your developers, and your MySQL guys, if you do whatever, if they all can work off the same place, they're all speaking the same language, it really becomes a lingua franca between groups in the company, breaks down the silos, which is really a lot of what
DevOps is all about. It's the term as I know it. And I did have to go to Wikipedia every time before I go to a DevOps event, and I'm getting more and more exactly the hang of it. I only make fun of that now, but I'll talk about it more in a minute. So DevOps in general, it really does seem to be that there's so much hype around it. And you read these grandiose statements across the web all the time. I'm not even sure what these mean, but I'd be shocked if 25% of the Global 2000 could come up and tell me exactly what it means. Having said that, I still don't think it's a bad thing by any means. I'm a big fan. To me, what DevOps really means is we have a job to do. This is the best way to do it. My favorite part about it is the communication aspects it brings is really making the word operation being brought more into the fold. The architects are talking about it, the higher-ups are talking about it, everybody's talking about it. Why? Because it's more efficient, and it's a natural progression of the world. If it has to be coined a term, that's fine, but that's kind of how I see it. It really comes down to everybody using this together. So for a while, operations. I've been in a number of companies over the years. I've done enough MySQL replication to make me hate MySQL. That goes back to my ISIM days where a control C by a developer would destroy it. What I'm really coming to the conclusion of, and I think this is a lot of what DevOps is about, is it's really up to ops to lead as necessary, as much as I like to have a little fun about it. And I only put this quote up here, and this is Jesse Ockman's the Director of Operations at the company. Just to show you that there are huge inefficiencies when you're talking about these two groups, development and operation, not talking together. And this is like verbatim just when I happened to mention to this, so I thought it was pretty funny. He's actually an excellent programmer. The other quote here, I'm not going to name names. He's in this room. I won't name his name, but I want to thank him for having us here today. All right, so what DevOps really is coming down to in my world is it's really about embracing the different skill sets that people have. An analogy that I thought of recently is, somebody designing a fighter jet. You got these material science guys, combustion, weapon systems, whatever. They're great. They're really making it done. Oftentimes, they are not the guys to be flying this. I would say 99% of the time, and they shouldn't be. And there's, the old curmudgeonly ops guy in me says that I don't want sysadmins to even log into the system half the time. I mean, to some degree, we honestly can't have that because of compliance reasons. But what it really comes down to is that developers' job is to code. And operations folks have to realize that. You cannot be an impediment to them releasing the code as long as it's not going to affect you and what you're probably responsible for, which is uptime. And it's something that I've had to reiterate with my group and with developers is that you all really have the same goal in mind. Some of these professions will bleed into others. There's some developers that are excellent ops or operations, and vice versa. They just might focus on one skill set and the other. And that's totally fine. The best ones know both, but still it's not efficient to have them necessarily working on both. So getting back to our application deployment story, I just want to put up this slide. This is literally an email that I copied from 2011 when I started at the company. Again, this is like 4 or 5 people. And it was from the CTO. And my favorite parts about this is the version. I can knock that, but I'm not a developer, so I won't knock it too much. What I will knock is the fact that the URL is SB, meaning it literally was in a closet at the office at the time. My other favorite things about it are, it's 2 entire things that encompass release in his world. It's already been set up once, run 3. If it has never been set up, run 3 steps or 4 steps. If it has, run 2. This code would actually, and of course it's Perl, even though we're a Java shop. That's the only other language that the developers know for some strange reason. And this literally would check the code out in every server and compile it. It would take forever, there's downtime associated with it, but from the developer's point of view, this was fine. I mean, they honestly don't care about the end users. They is a strong word, but it's just not in their mindset to care about the downtime of the potential customer at that time.
It's also HTTP.
Exactly. So things change. Back then, that was the only application that powered all of Logic application. And all these layers, and each one of the layers has the latest and greatest buzzword compliance stuff, from Zookeeper, which I can't stand, to Kafka, Mesos, Storm, SQS, simple queuing service, and Amazon, Redis, you name it. On the data layers, where we've done a lot of change as well, where again it used to just be, I hate to say it, but it did used to be RRDs, and no longer is. But we've really reconstructed that entire area to some great reasons, meaning we don't even roll up data anymore. We are lossless going back up to 2 years. This is our more modern day architecture. And again, this has happened over the last 5 years. And the point in bringing this up is that we've just had an explosion of servers, data centers, both physical and in Amazon, a lot of Amazon regions there. And the short of this is that this is good for the company. It is a natural progression that there are all these separate applications. There's not one monolithic application that the developers have to focus on, because if every developer has to be smart enough to work on this giant ball of spaghetti, things break. So it gets split up. It's good for the company. It's good for ops in some ways, though it makes your job a lot more difficult. But it's really looking at managing this kind of infrastructure as it grew that really got me into the DevOps-y mindset, and that it is not possible to run an infrastructure with multiple layers, applications distributed all over the place in more SOA architecture without applying a lot of the DevOps principles. Life just won't work unless you want to give developers full access to everything, which is a terrible idea. So this is our current deployment model, and I apologize to the Jenkins guy. This is Bamboo. It's an Atlassian product. This was a bad example because I was trying to release the exact same version that's already deployed. This was just a screenshot. The point of this is that there is no compilation that I'm doing, and this deployment is actually not done by the operations group anymore. It's a wonderful thing. We don't have to sit around and worry about it. On top of it, we have monitoring to make sure that it does work, so I can be confident that this is going to work, and this is how this relates back to what our company does. It's just click button as close as it can be. Underneath the hood is running Ansible. In the mornings, or if there is a problem, if there is an alert that comes through, we have visibility now into where things are. The ops guys don't have to panic, what happened last night, what was released, what features were enabled, what possibly could have caused this, what were the released logs and whatnot. They're all in one centralized place. This is a big, important thing for us as a company, and it really goes, again, the DevOps world. There's communication here, and it's not just ops, it's not just development, it's also the product folks. They want to know something got released, support folks as well. Did something happen last night? Again, making this all available is huge. Again, going to the visibility aspect, I'm paranoid. I got a shirt that had that at the bottom right, because that really is a credo of mine. We get in the morning, and if there has been a release, we haven't been paged on anything. Why? Because the Ansible module we have goes in there, and it will set a scheduled downtime. So nobody gets an alert. Great. However, if we see these kind of graphs saying, what the hell happened? Why did these things happen? And we can quickly get in here this time. The ops team, as well as the developers. And the fact that we did get paged on it is fantastic too. If we had been paged on it, we can jump in here and look right away. I can see what happened. I know where to focus my attention. I'm happy to show people a live example of this later. So what might be a little different about our story? I don't know if it's different. I'm guessing to some degree. But it's an ops run shop. The founder was an ops guy. I'm an ops guy. So maybe we have more power. I'm not sure. I've worked there for 5 years, which is kind of when DevOps has been in vogue. So I can't say if this is common or not. The fact is that ops pushed through the move to Git. And part of the reason I mention things like this is because it's not okay for the operations group to sit in their laurels and say, this is not the right way to do things. You can say that all you want, but you have to make it happen. The way we made it happen is we started mirroring Subversion to Git. Internally, we started using Git. At some point, you show the CTO and you talk, or the CTO, and you talk with him enough and say, look, there's all these frameworks, there's workflows that really make a lot of sense. And if they're all reasonable, they'll adopt them. If you make it so that it's a click button, you can go back and forth, some developers might start using it, the chances of adoption are much greater. Same applies for things like Jira, the Stash, and Bamboo. We ran Bugzilla, believe it or not, way back. Many probably still do, but we ported this stuff over there. We didn't sit around and say, look, this is a terrible way of doing it. We did it. Look, you guys can see it, does this fit? It didn't quite work. Right, we'll go back and resync it. Got it working. Same goes for Stash, same goes for Bamboo. Use of console, which we can talk about later. We also push through becoming part of the architecture review board, it's ARB. Now that's a fancy way of saying it. There's a lot of informal ways of doing that. What it really means is in the operations group and DevOps group, you need to have a seat at the table before you get software and say, this architecture either stinks, there's no way this can work, why are you doing it this way? It's largely because of this that we're using console and not Zookeeper for our service registry. I can't stand Zookeeper after working with a little bit, echo commands with netcat to it. Console's a much more modern way of doing things. How do we get them to adopt it? We installed it. We started registering things into it, services for them. Look, it's here. We made it easier for their lives. It's easier for our lives to support. And the question is, why do we do all this? The answer is it's good for uptime. Period. It makes things more robust. When I say good for uptime, one caveat on that. Operations get things to the point where you can specify, look, I can get things so if we lose an entire data center or some service, maybe it's a 30-minute outage, maybe it's an hour-long outage. You need to be able to define that and say to the CTO, to the business stakeholders, this is as far as we can get without development work, right? And that is a completely fair place for you to be. You can't do that asymptotic curve of you'll never ever get to zero. Downtime and ops. It's a business decision at this point. You could say to the business folks on this side, this might take 6 months of development, which time we won't be releasing featured nearly as much or not. It's not my decision, the ops group. It's not my job. It's not even development's job, honestly. This is really up to the businesses to decide. So, how do we get on this journey, and what is the ultimate goal? When I wrote this down, I almost put seamless software delivery, but that was wrong. The ultimate goal is the company's success. Let's all face it. We all work for people. That's the way it is. It's not releasing software. It's making sure the company, your work survives. The best way to do that is to release software. Operations and development. Let's face it, you guys, we might look at each other now sometimes. Operations development is get software out there as fast as possible. So a few other steps we took to get to this point was automate the mundane. I'm not even going to go through the list. If you're spending time, busy work, doing this sort of thing, it's wasted time. It feels like you did a lot of work. It feels like you got a lot of things done, but you're sitting at the keyboard doing things that are not really adding any value. If you want to propel the continuous build, deployments, anything like that, make sure you're not dealing with this stuff all the time because it's not fun. Even if you're doing physical installs, you can also get other folks, younger guys who maybe don't want to get a step into IT, have them do the physical stuff. Just don't be involved in it. You can all possibly do that. User provisioning falls into that. It's not high value work. Second way we approach it, we started with a greenfield project, meaning one that's brand new. It's not out there. There's deadlines and stuff for existing projects that are out there. It's hard to get any sort of interruption involved in those. Ours was the time series database that we developed in the back end. More leeway and timing for it. And what I really found to be a positive, a huge thing was it lets you create a template, because going from absolutely no continuous builds, deployments, etc., to having across all your apps is not just, let's just do it one app at a time. If you don't have a framework for doing it, and you have multiple people in your team, which I'm sure you do, each one's going to do it slightly differently, and it's just become a mess. It's a great time to figure out, here's a great way to do this and apply it across all your apps. Silly things like agreeing a handoff point. This is really at the beginning of things. If you haven't defined this yet between development and operations, do it. It doesn't matter what it is, just define, this is the handoff point, here we're going to name it, and here's the location. It's a great place to start. It's the very base of what we did. Some of these things go away, like if you get integrated builds and whatnot, you have artifacts, your build systems can deal with this stuff. But good place to start is there. From there, we progress to the automated builds. And my thing about automated builds is I really think that everybody needs to understand how they work. In our group, and I'm really not trying to badmouth the dev team, they're really genius guys. They just develop. They don't think about how can we do things better. This works, that's fine. But we're the ones that push through these automated builds. We're saying, here's an example of how to do it. We can run Gradle. We're not developers by trade, but we know good and bad code and good and bad development or build when we see it. It's critical you know how this stuff works, and you're going to be on call for supporting it half the time. It's really fair that you understand it. You should really understand your build application and how it works. The last comment there is automate it or audit it. If you have development, do it, because at least in our group, when we said, gave them a few examples and they started doing it themselves, the first thing they did was copy all this really crappy shell code right into Ansible and say, we are now doing continuous builds. And in the back end of that, they were copying files around and whatnot, and it was atrocious. Keep an eye. I'm a big fan of integrated tools. I don't want to sound like a Microsoft guy or something, I'm not. But when your build system can talk to your ticketing system, can talk to your stash repo or your Git repo, it makes life easier for me. And really, I like an easy life. Oops. Am I going the wrong way? Sorry. There we go. All right, so you got things building fine. Now it's really starting to start automating them. Starting with a checklist is fine for the deployment. I'm sorry, onto deployments. Checklist is fine. You should do a checklist. Jumping right to automation is like a developer deciding to automating things. You really know what's happening underneath the hood, and it's good for all your guys. I love you for it. But it'll really motivate them as well to start getting into, let's really think about automating this sort of thing. Choose a deployment tool methodology. We chose Ansible. We think it's a great tool. We have a module for it with LogicMonitor as well. Really comes in handy for, again, scheduling downtime or adding hosts if that's part of builds for you. Could be. And then start doing the builds. Do a command line edition. That's what we did with Ansible. And we did this for a long time, and we're still doing this for a lot of our apps, probably most of them. And it's only after that it's really set and down that you can make it GUI and make it pretty. And that is a good goal to have. Again, I really like using something, why you layer a GUI like Bamboo on top of Ansible. For me, it's the information sharing, it's DevOps. Why? Because I can go to Bamboo and I can see the log of it. Everybody can follow the release. We can all see what's going on. There's a notification to HipChat that says the deployment started. The support guys can see it too. Everybody's on board. If we get a page, we can jump in and see it. All right, so then we start getting, there we go. All right, everything's working swimmingly. Why, and you in tech ops, are you wasting your time staying up late? If you have things all the way monitored to the degree where you're confident you're monitoring, and again, this goes a lot to monitoring, why maybe I have a prejudice towards this, but why are you still pushing the deploy button? There's no power, there's no good reason for you to be doing this. It's wasted work. Get out of the way, let others do it. There are plenty of other things to do. Don't be a monkey pushing buttons. Everything's in monitoring, you'll be fine, you'll know if it's not. So where we are now. Ops members are assigned as a point for each software module and works with development independently. First, I didn't do that, have them organized that way, and it honestly worked out terribly because everybody doesn't know enough in the developer group they're working with. I find it's really effective to have somebody work directly with the group. There's a whole dispersion of responsibility thing that happens if you don't have that. Some apps are deployed by dev, some by support. Strangely enough, we're still in that world. It's for historical reasons. That will go away eventually. We're still on call for all applications. I'm happy that way. We're an operation company. The worst thing in the world we can do is make mistakes which result in you guys getting pages. So I will err on that side for a long, long, long time until we really have it down. Where we want to be, I want some applications to be auto-deployed in a successful build. That's our next step in some areas. Some will be based automatically, time-based. They do affect customers at times, so ideally we just have a Jira ticket. Somebody else scheduled it. Somebody says, these customers are going to do it. I don't want to be involved anywhere in that process. I don't interact with the customers directly usually, so let's do it that, through a Jira ticket. And dev groups will eventually be on call for their apps. We have no choice in this. I don't really care to be a masochist and page all the time, and we're not that often. We push back a lot. But at some point, with all the metrics they bake in and they're required to with their applications, they have to be the ones that are responsible for saying this performance metric is off or not. So let's quickly go through problems along the way. Getting the operations team really focused on automating deployments for dev. It's kind of like going through an email. It's really easy to go through stuff you know. I really should be doing this. Let me go through some emails, and I feel kind of productive. Same went for deployments. Everybody's busy to get these deployments. It's not us against them. It's to get the business going. It's to really propel that. Don't be a monkey pushing buttons constantly. You can help it. The framework I alluded to earlier kind of said, all right, everybody, we're automating everything. That's the goal for every one of your projects. It has to be built, and it has to be made to be deployed automatically by the developer. And I didn't provide a framework, so we had 7 different Ansible methodologies of doing it. We had 8 different tasks in the deployment projects. We had permissions that weren't set correctly. That was a major mistake on my end. This last one is just, you got to spend time going through documentation. There's a lot of features and whatnot in these tools that they're there for a reason. If you don't understand why they're there, reread it. At some point, you should at least understand it, even if it's not applicable. And development. They didn't take time to understand the build tools. That still, I think, is my favorite, where they copy and pasted the build scripts directly into a task in Bamboo and said, we're now doing automated builds. I mean, you got to be able to audit that. Come on, guys. Nice try. They're developers. Their idea of like when they did have access to machines was, you know, well, can we just modify the customer's data? Can we go and take it down for a while? No, you can't. These customers, we're a SaaS company. We're always up. It's not acceptable to take things down. It's just not in their mindset. They're not geared towards this all the time. You can train up certain ones that do have access, but don't allow everybody. Not talking to ops in the early design stages, kind of already went through that. Have a stake at the table. You need to if you want your life to really exist in a nice way, not get paid all the time. Embarrassingly, there's a lack of attention to monitoring from them. It just drove me nuts and things like, so we did this and it's going to make this faster. Great hypothesis. What's the data to back it after it's released? I mean, without working on feelings here and whatnot. So to make sure development is mandated to have metrics for what they're doing and looks after release. Did this move as you expected it to? Was there a decrease, increase, etc.? That's working a lot for the development team. Fun things, we're going to start using gamut of buzzword compliance stuff. There usually is good reason for this stuff. AWS, ECS, ECR. I don't particularly want to run Mesos. Sounds like fun and all, but other things to do. Docker, because we get these one-off apps that are more internal use that who wants to deal with Ruby dependencies for the rest of their life. Terraform is really promising to fire up entire instances, especially DevQA. Console for service registration, I'm really excited about that, potentially as a way also to do a dynamic configuration of apps. It's still an area we haven't really worked through is how in certain environments of Puppets controlling configurations can developers affect it. Developers working on Puppet code is a terrible idea. And really, that's all I have to say. Whirlwind, so any questions?
How big is your ops team versus dev?
We hired 2 guys recently, which is great. We went from 6 to now we're at 8. We have about 50 developers.
I noticed Chef disappeared from your management tools that you listed. Have you discarded it? Or
We never used it. And I use Puppet.
So how does everything tie into each other? Does it work in a sense like Jenkins would, where you do a bunch of command lines and then it deploys?
Yeah, you talking how Bamboo works?
No, LogicMonitor.
Oh, LogicMonitor, we have a REST API. So depending on what you're doing, we have Ansible modules and whatnot. So in Bamboo, as part of an Ansible play, we have a module that just says, put this service and schedule downtime during the deploy. Okay. Simple as that.
Yeah, the slide that you had on problems along the way, you had a very common one which was not being brought into design discussions or not being involved. How did you solve that, and how did you solve it?
I sounded like it was triumphant and that we got into the architectural review board, which we did, which still from, I think, a development standpoint looks like we have to do this kind of thing. That helps some, but what it really comes down to is the point guy for every project. When it gets to the point where they have to start releasing it, the QA, we have a QA UAT, which is kind of like a before QA stage. Those guys will bring it to my attention saying, look, they're asking to do some crazy things, like all databases need to be writable now. No, they don't in this service. No,
what is it you monitor other than servers and applications during the continuous deployment or continuous integration?
Beyond applications and servers. Yeah, I mean, so I guess maybe that's what you're asking. Yeah, like so we use load balancers. We have NetScalers, firewalls, everything. There's not anything in our infrastructure that is not monitored by LogicMonitor. I'm not making that as a pitch for the company, I'm saying it as a fact. That's just how it stands, including like console. I mean, routines are being run there. I mean, everything is. Unless you're talking about feelings or something, I'm not.
Keep black and white. Feeling side, right, that's too much gray. All right, go.
It's not a question, but I think you're gonna upgrade your URL. You're gonna buy the cert. You're gonna do SSL. You have HTTP.
The what?
The URL you just showed us.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be URL. You're gonna get HTTPS.
Oh, that was, like I said, 5 years ago inside the office. I don't know.
Any other questions back here? No, we got, all right. No? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we are going to take a quick break before we start up the lightning talks. So guys, please feel free to grab some food, grab some drinks, hit the restroom, and then as soon as we get on to the lightning talks, we will literally make them like lightning, all right? Thank you.
Is there a resurgence? The subversion that we will have, but I think guys who's been reporting I know there's a lot of users there. My own company. Let's see. I don't know how they're actually we don't interface with our guys I couldn't do it last night. I didn't want the snoopers. I didn't want the snoopers.
It is. Hello, everyone. Can I have your attention and override your conversation, which I assume is so important right now? I'm waiting. Thank you. I appreciate your attention right now. So I'm here to talk about the benefit of constraints. One of the constraints I'm placing upon you right now is being quiet during the conversation that we're about to have. Is that okay? Is that comfortable? Awesome, thank you. So I came from a startup. I like to still think we're a startup called Blue Box. We do OpenStack as a service, which means that we take all the pain of OpenStack for you, so you can consume it just as cloud as it was actually meant to be. So we do dedicated, local. We got bought out by IBM. If you want to talk sales, I can talk later, whatever, that's my spiel. So we started with a team of about, I think, 3 people, grew to 5. When we got acquired from the OpenStack team, it was 8 of us. which is kind of interesting when you think about moving into somebody like IBM. There are only 420,000 people. We were a company of 65 with a 98% of our business and customer use was our legacy managed hosting from engineering perspective. That makes some interesting perspectives. We actually displaced a team within IBM. They were building OpenStack as a service, exactly that we wanted to do, except we had paying customers, and they had 100 developers. So again, the benefit of constraints. That's one of the interesting scaling challenge for us, getting in, integrating within IBM, and the mythical man month has come to fruition for us. Here, have some resources. We're just going to throw developers. They said they know Python, and they know ops, DevOps, or there's a thing you do. You can have them. So we've spent a lot of our time actually retraining people into an operations mindset, into an automation. Where we're at now, but how we got there was the interesting story. Like I said, it was 8 of us at our most. You get an interesting feeling for that. If any of you work in a startup, you have specific constraints that you're operating under. You can start a startup and you think, I'm going to go solve any of these problems. I'm going to go make a successful business. You're going to fail. You will fail hard because you haven't defined anything. You have an open field, great. You're going to go die. So you need to set a direction, you set a constraint. I'm going to go do this thing. I'm going to go do it really well. And I don't know how, but I'm going to try, so I'm going to learn. This is where the lean methodology comes in. So we really tried to integrate with that and incorporate within our engineering processes. And so basically, you do a POC, you do an MVP, and that's kind of it. You don't get to do the waterfall development. You don't get to say all of my metrics are here and here's the system. You don't get to throw it over the wall to operations because you are operations. You wrote it, you built it, you ship it, and you're on the pager, which gives you a very tight feedback loop. And that's what it comes down to. It's the iteration. It's the constraint that it's by your team, for your team, with your team. That's the whole DevOps model, just right there. And so with 8 of us, we were able to ship this. We built all of OpenStack to a bunch of different customers and cloud deployments all over the world. We do stuff on-premise now, which is interesting. So for all that, we need to build another back-end infrastructure. It's another constraint that we had to apply to ourselves. And so using both of those is basically, how do we do this thing as quickly as possible? And so we end up using, we use Ansible. This isn't an Ansible meetup, but that's what our constraint was that we applied. What is the config management choices available? And so we didn't actually do the dry model of like, hey, here's the Chef Supermarket or the store, or here's Ansible Galaxy. It's like, no, we're going to copy and paste this thing over here, and screw you guys, this is what we need. We need RabbitMQ right now, and we should probably share this at a later time, but we're going to wrap with that tech debt. And that basically allowed us, each of our Ansible repos, to focus on that one specific product, which again is a constraint. It's very freeing though, by actually placing it upon yourself. You're not actually trying to coordinate between different teams. And that's the problem we're running into it as we grow. It's coordination that kills productivity. It kills velocity. So those 8 people in that room, that guy owns that product, that other guy owns this other system, she owns all of our operations and tells us what the heck we're actually supposed to be working on, because we all know, we think we know, but she knows. That's kind of how it works for us, is that we had those people, you were in charge of it, and you share that workload. But that was the dedication we had. Now I have 100 people, how do we actually balance workload? We have a scrum of scrum meetings, believe it or not, because that's our cross-team engineering coordination. That's just within engineering, without management involved. And so these are the problems that you run into, growing from a small-scale startup into a large-scale organization. It's fine, it's a good thing, we're one of the lucky ones, don't get me wrong. But as a startup, even as a mid-sized organization, you can kind of take these lessons and apply them to your own engineering. How do you take that problem you have, that system you're trying to build, the whole 2 pizza model, how do you constrain it down? How do you keep your config management into the specific application you're trying to do, and just care about that? Ship it, get your MVP out the door, learn, cycle, iterate, getting our velocity up now.
So one thing that you talked about was you said you decided on Ansible early on, and having a decision as a constraint is useful. But how do you make that decision early on and decide this is the right constraint to pick?
We had lots of experience between Puppet and Chef and just shell scripts. I'm dropping the other word in there. And so kind of that experience was what gave us the freeing ability. We knew of Ansible, but
we knew that with OpenStack we needed large-scale orchestration, and that's not what Puppet or Chef does well at all, the orchestration aspect of it. And so that's, for our purposes, that's what we needed. I know there's other tools like Salt out there that do similar things that may do it better than Ansible does, but for our unique purposes, we specifically need orchestration. We need this OpenStack service to come up before the next one.
Okay, but more generally than that, when you're setting a constraint, how do you determine what constraint is a good constraint to set?
It's very generic, SE. So what we try to do in that model, trying to be generic, is basically when we're acting tech debt, we're making architectural decisions. We know that we think waterfall, but we try to say agile. And I mean by that, we're designing a system, we're writing the code for it, and we know that this will be a problem in the future. So we won't just like write a to-do or fix me, we'll write an actual documentation and architectural review saying this will be a problem. That's the best we can really come down to. Is that we're creating that decision, we're creating the constraints that will bite us in the butt later on. Depends on which generic direction you want to go, but that's kind of what I can apply with architecture. Anybody else?
You convince stakeholders that constraints are a good thing.
By telling them that we can only ship 5 features in the 2 weeks that they gave us. We can either ship none of them, or we can ship these 2 ones that you define as priorities. It's just simple stuff like always defining, you have trade-offs and actually recognizing them, actually communicating them back. I mean, I think the interesting thing for us coming into IBM has been pushing back on them constantly. We're very opinionated engineers. They're not used to that. Our entire company has been, you give us a process and we say, well, what else is there? And you give us a second process and we'll do it this way, which has been a new thing. We're the new kids on the block that are kind of the pains, but it seems to be working really well because we're actually reshaping a lot of the engineering processes and people are paying attention. I mean, if you push this model, if you get the actual buy-in and lock-in from upper management, they'll probably go with it because the results will absolutely exceed what the existing processes are capable of. So twice.
What are some of the techniques and methods that you're using to assimilate the engineers that are being thrown in your direction without killing the velocity of the other people that are on the team at the same time as introducing new methods and processes to the people who are joining?
So we pretty much try to throw them into the fire hose of here's exact work that we need to do, here's operations. We don't throw them on call right away, that's kind of crazy, but we do give them access to a production-like environment with full access to screw up and fail. We all believe in trial by fire is the best method to learning and success later on. And so that's kind of what we do. We give you a full process, like here's the code base, and we'll guide you as mentoring and give you directions for troubleshooting, but we can't hold your hand through this. And you're going to go ship this feature on your own. That's your volume too.
So basically you sort of segment a set of features that need to get shipped that are maybe lower criticality.
Yeah. They're definitely not critical path, but they're almost always on the roadmap because we generally don't do work otherwise. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Miles, thank you very much. Guys, do you have any other questions for Miles? We're going to be posting, obviously, his talk online along with his contact information. Miles is one of the organizers with us for DevOps Days. He's going to be around, so definitely grab him for sidebar conversations. For now, I want to introduce James. James is going to be talking a lot about people, all right, for his lightning talk. Very interesting. So if you guys please let's hold off sidebar conversations so we can each hear all the presentations, and then afterwards we can look forward to having independent and individual conversations with them. All right. So here's James. Hey Glenn, source switch. Hey, what source is it? All right, there's Glenn. Glenn handles all technical issues.
Sorry.
It was just there a second ago.
What the hell did you do?
PC low letter.
What the fuck does that mean?
Does anyone have a screwdriver?
Sonic or otherwise? Yes.
I think it was an HDMI 2 when
show some.
There we go. Okay. Great. Oh, you can see my embarrassing Ansible code up there. Oh. That is not full screen.
Bad answer.
Alright, that's almost full screen. I'm not actually going to be using slides for this one. I just wanted to put something up. Alright, so my talk is what we know about habit formation. So this is actually not a tech talk at all. If you want to take a 5-minute long nap, go for it. Now's a great time to start. So I'm James, he, him pronouns. I work as a site reliability engineer at the Center for Brain Science at Harvard. So basically what I do is support researchers doing science on brains. That's actually my brain in the background. I just did my first MRI scan after working there for about a year. The kinds of research we do is like social psychology research mainly, so maybe they'll put you in the tube and ask you questions about, I don't know, like morality or something. What I do is I support the statistics that these researchers run on those brain scans. So that involves a lot of things like managing pipelines, deploying new versions of software. So something that I've really been doing is a lot of Ansible automation and a lot of continuous integration. But what I'm going to be talking to you about today is actually just psychology, because I actually have a degree in psychology. It's one of the reasons I ended up here. So I want to talk about the psychology of habits, because that's what today is about. And as it turns out, most of what people know about habits is basically wrong. Like, this is true of a lot of folk psychology, and it's fine that you don't know that much about it. Most of you don't have degrees in psychology. Most of you have never really studied this. It turns out habits actually are very well studied in literature, but there's a huge gap between what you see in like psychology today and what the actual psychology literature is about. Like the pop psychology stuff tends to be pretty easily debunked, or maybe it was accurate 30 years ago. So what I'd like to start off with is what habits are not. So habits are not behaviors, first of all. So like me getting up here and talking to you all, that's a behavior, it's an action. It's something considered, something that I've chosen to do. On the other hand, habits are a system. So behaviors tend to be isolated. Habits include a behavioral component, but they're actually part of a feedback loop. Even a behavior that you do regularly, like my commute, is not a habit, because as soon as I left my job, I would stop doing that commute. Instead, it's just a regular behavior. There's no reinforcement component. There's nothing encouraging me to keep doing that commute. Now, habits also are not learning. We might say that we picked up a habit or we learned a habit, but habit acquisition is really its own process. What this means is that learning tends to be a conscious process. It leaves you with memories of something, and those memories will tend to fade if you don't use them. Habits are actually stored differently in the brain, and they tend to be much more ingrained. So a habit might go away if you're not around some triggers for that habit, but it will actually tend to pick back up if you go back into that situation, as opposed to learning, where if you just don't use something, you're going to forget it pretty quickly. Now, habits actually also are not addictions. They're both forms of uncontrolled behavior. They both have some elements of compulsion. But addictions typically actually involve some conscious behavior, like you have to go out of your way to go buy drugs. They generally just don't show up. So habit is actually much more unconscious. It's typically something that you're not thinking about. They also involve withdrawal, addictions do, whereas habits don't necessarily. You have a lot of habits where breaking them might be difficult, but you actually won't suffer anything negative as a result of breaking them. It's just a lot of hard work to do so. So what habits are actually a system that's really a loop. There are three components. You have a cue, that's something in your environment that's essentially a trigger to the second component of behavior. And what's critical to know about habits is that actually they don't have to be conscious. So I'll give an example. I just have a habit that anytime I see someone reach for their phone and check it, I just have a compulsion to go check my phone. That's something I don't really think about. And that's actually part of what makes it a habit, the fact that it's just this behavior that you've acquired over time and that's really deeply ingrained. It may not even make sense, because what's really happening is the third component in this loop, after the cue and the behavior, is the reward. Well, why would I go check my phone after I see someone checking their phone?
because the past times when I've checked my phone in those circumstances, I've gotten some kind of reward, like seeing an email I was expecting, or maybe one of my friends messaged me. So you have these 3 steps, this cue, this behavior, and it's actually pretty easy to see why each one of those steps could be something that you're not even aware is happening, but they all work together to create a self-reinforcing habit. So some habit loops might be, you feel anxious, so you bite your nails, and it turns out that that tends to give people a better sense of control. It reduces their anxiety. These habits are actually some of the hardest to break, ones that aren't really based about who you're around, but things about your own personal experience, because you can't just go to like a different workplace for something like nail biting. You're going to have anxiety experiences regardless of where you are, and that makes it a lot harder to break. So habits have some interesting characteristics. One of them is metastability. What that means is that habits are not the lowest energy state. Often, habits actually take time out of our lives. They're distractions. But they're very stable despite the fact that they are not the lowest energy state. What that means is that they have an activation barrier. If you want to break a habit, it often requires a lot more energy than forming that habit did in the first place. Habits are also very highly contextual. The habits that you have depend on the cues that you're exposed to. So you can change who you're around, you can change what kind of workplace you're at. Now, that leads us to what do you do if you want to break a habit? So you can go remove those cues, and that's often very effective for people if they can figure out what those cues are. So one habit that a lot of people have is overeating. That is not necessarily the same thing as like obesity, but let's just say that some people just feel bad when they eat more than they expected to. So one of the primary components of this is what people around you are eating. Being around someone who's eating more food than you actually feel compelled to eat more food yourself, or seeing a larger plate of food, again, you'll tend to eat more food. We're often not aware of these cues, but that's something that we can use to break habits. You can also look at preventing the behavior. So let's say that you're concerned about overeating. One thing you might do is get rid of junk food that you have laying around the house. It's not that there's not food available, but yeah, I keep a pretty busy schedule. No. Oh, I see it. Hold it off the tab.
Using spaces for finger swipe to the side.
Well, it's not actually full screen. It's there we go.
There we go.
Got that? Anyways, so preventing behavior. Another classical example of this in habit formation. One of the habits that is very common and tends to distress people is nail biting. And the cue for that is often anxiety, and they can't really do that much about you being anxious other than going through therapy or having some medication. In addition to that, what they'll do is actually just this really simple trick. They'll give you clear nail polish that's very bitter. So when you start biting your nails, you just don't want to do it anymore. And that ties into the last component, is affecting the reward for doing this. So that's actually often one of the trickiest things, because it's very difficult to take something that is rewarding and then make it not rewarding. Those kinds of habits tend to be really difficult to stop if you don't have some way to rewire that reward so that it no longer reinforces your habit. So let's bring it back to DevOps. Now, workplaces, they provide a lot of levers to go change habits. If you think about it, when you're at a workplace, someone is in control of a lot of aspects of your life. They can go change the furniture, they can change who you work with, they can mandate that you use a particular scheduling tool. So given that workplaces have this great degree of control over how we live our lives, the context that we've seen is the trigger for habits, why do workplaces suck at instilling good habits in us? So a lot of this comes down to the way that managers see these behaviors. And for starters, managers often are trying to change behaviors, not habits. So the difference between a behavior and a habit is that a habit is part of a reinforcing system. A behavior is just something you do, and as soon as you kind of stop applying directed pressure to continue that behavior, you have nothing reinforcing it, and that's what makes it not a habit, and that's what makes it kind of doomed to failure. And this ties into something else that managers at tech companies tend to do, is they tend to have a lot of conflicting priorities, changing priorities, a lot of client demands that suddenly supersede everything. So even if you had the basics of a habit, if you had some kind of reinforcement, as soon as you start changing the conditions, you wind up with something completely different that stops reinforcing your habit. So it's actually very difficult if you're in a chaotic situation like that to get the regular repeated exposure you need for habit formation. And finally, another really big problem with managers is they tend to rely on willpower. If you just try hard enough, you'll be able to go establish this habit. Think about how many times people have asked you, like, just go write tests. Well, it's actually really hard to use willpower consistently. The scientific evidence on this says that actually we have finite reserves of willpower throughout the day. Like, you can make a certain number of decisions effectively, and then after that it's all downhill. There's even some evidence that it's like directly tied to blood glucose, which is super interesting. They've done studies on this where they look at judges and kind of the harshness of the sentences they give to criminals, and it changes over the course of the day based on how close it is to when they just ate. So, like, if you're ever going to be in a criminal case, just hope that's right after lunch, because you're going to get a more lenient sentence. So, when you also think about companies like Google, they'll go change their floor plan, they'll leave snacks lying around. The reason they do this is because they want you to have to think as little as possible so that you can conserve that willpower for thinking about algorithms, right? Like, they want you to be having the hard decisions be technical decisions, not what you're going to eat. So, one final question though. Now that you know a lot more about habits, you could use this for like evil, right? If you're a manager, you could go get your employees to do things they don't really want. But before you do that, think about what habits actually are. They're a system of behavior. And the reason that they become so sticky and kind of so habitual is because they become ingrained. And when they're ingrained like that, they're very automatic, they're very inflexible, and they're very unthinking. So we think about habits as something that we want. We want to have good habits. But I'm actually going to kind of flip that around and think of it this way. Are all the behaviors that we want to have that are positive behaviors things that we actually want to have habits? Right? Like, are there some behaviors that are generally good, but you want to have expressed in a way that requires thinking? And this actually ties to a problem in configuration management. Configuration management we generally accept as a good thing, but it also means that that change you're making, instead of rolling it out to one server at a time, you're rolling it out to like 100 servers, and nobody's going to go vet that. You could bring all of those servers down in one go. And in some sense, habits are the same way. By establishing this very effective reinforcement loop, you kind of lose the manual control that you get if you had to actually think about it. So I contest that while habits are actually super effective, they're not always the right solution for a behavior you want to encourage. They're just one way to do this. So as a summary, habits are innate to human behavior. There's a lot of literature about them. It's influenced things like nutrition, marketing. It's not just psychology. Habit research has been pretty widespread. Bad habits do exist, but when we say that about programming culture, we're actually usually talking about non-habits. Like, not writing tests for something is not a bad habit. That's actually just not having any habit of writing tests. To establish or break habits, you do need to focus on the cue, behavior, reward loop. Changing your environment is much more effective than pretty much anything else in terms of changing how these habits get formed. And once they are formed, they tend to be very stable, as long as that environment is also stable. So if you have a very chaotic environment, it tends to be very hard for habits to become reinforced. And finally, habits have downsides. So when we talk about building better DevOps habits, consider what you're really getting yourself into if you try and establish a program like this. All right, so thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Hey, I want to just kind of reinforce one thing that if you guys don't understand the value that James just brought to the table in talking about human behavior and how and motivations, rewards, and how people think, and you can't align that with how DevOps is, let's have a sidebar conversation, because this not to put any other discussion down, this is probably one of the most valuable things that I've seen from my experience when talking to executives who are trying to go through transformation. It isn't about the technology. It really isn't. It's about the mindset. And James, thank you so much, because some of the things that you talked about really did dive into root causes of thought process. I highly suggest people grab James if you want a sidebar conversation specifically on your circumstance, but what a valuable discussion he just brought to the table. James, thank you very much. That said, anybody have any questions? So we got time for three questions, and again, if you need a sidebar because you want to go more in depth, James will be available to you.
Oh, we got one? Okay. He's not available for questions.
You mentioned that habits have three components: a cue, a behavior, and a reward. Are they all required? For example, in tech, we seem to have the habit of beginning sentences with "so." So I was wondering, what is the reward for that to me?
So not every behavior that's consistent is a habit. A habit is very specifically those three components in a reinforcing loop. We have lots of behaviors. Actually, when you say "so," you might call it like a verbal tick, but actually it does provide a very useful purpose. We put words like that in sentences to essentially slow them down. When we're speaking too fast, it doesn't align with the speed that we're thinking about something. So that's why we put uhs and ums in sentences. They actually do provide a very useful linguistic role. Okay.
Other questions?
Jason.
Oh, yeah.
One more question for you. So when you were talking about this, the habit that came to mind for me is developing, pushing commits on GitHub and seeing continuous integration run unit tests on my code, and the reward being the green check mark that I get on GitHub. So I guess my question is, are there other habits that you can think of that would be actively useful for development, for configuration, for deployment? Do you have any suggestions for things that could be implemented like that?
Yeah, let me get in front of that. All right, so actually one thing that I neglected to mention is when you talk about rewards in habit formation, that reward is very personal. It has to be something that is rewarding to that person. Basically like anything that's triggering the dopamine system, which could be something financial, or it could just be like attention and praise. But what's crucial about the reward is not just that it's rewarding, but that it's temporally proximate. And that's one of the reasons CI systems benefit most in terms of adoption. They have a very tight loop. If all your tests finish quickly, that makes it much more habit forming than if you have to wait. I actually have a test where it doesn't complete for like 12 hours because that's how long it takes to run some of the pipelines. So it just doesn't reinforce that you care about the test when you have to come in the next day to see it. So the more you can do in terms of having a very fast cycle is better for habit formation. For an example, Facebook, they did the hip hop VM and the hack language. One of the reasons they did their own language was to get the static testing time down enough that you could do like some commit locally, and within a few seconds you would get a response as to whether the static types all matched up. If you really care about getting like that green light response that makes you feel good, that's something to do. But I'll give a counterpoint. One thing I was working on today was linting, and like linting is totally great, it's useful, you should do it, but I was just setting up linting on a first project, and I was feeling like totally awesome that I was knocking out like 10 of these at a time, but they were also like things that were like indentations, stuff that wasn't actually super important. It felt great because I was able to clear a lot of them very quickly. That's very habit forming, but it's not necessarily the most useful. So you have to find a balance between the two. And actually one thing that I've seen people do is have separate test suites for a short test suite and a long test suite. So if something is immediately broken, you know within like 10, 20 seconds. Maybe if it takes 3 hours to run the whole test suite, you have that as a separate one, so you get at least some feedback for the habit formation involved.
That's fascinating. Thank you.
Will you be speaking at DevOps Meetup?
I'm running DevOps Days. So.
I know, that wasn't the question.
True story, I have run programming the last 2 years for DevOps Days. I have submitted talks. We use blind review, so I have rejected my own talks from DevOps Days for 2 years in a row. We'll see what that means. Good luck.
All right, our final lightning talk of the night is Cody telling us why binary is for computers. Welcome, Cody.
The floor's to the floor.
Glenn, we need your help.
Either way.
It's working better right now.
Okay. Hello. Can everyone hear me okay?
You're good?
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So, my name is Cody, and my pronouns are errs. And I'm sure that intro already has a bunch of you scratching your head going, what on earth is she up to? Well, actually, it would be what on earth is E up to, considering I just said that my pronouns are errs. So, now that I have broken some kind of social rule and, well, actually, probably a bunch of people in this room, I'm going to make you all a lot more uncomfortable as I talk about ways to better include gender non-conforming folks in the tech workspace and really any workspace. So, who the hell am I and why am I talking about this? And why maybe shouldn't I be? I'm female, so I know what it's like to be a minority in tech, a visible minority in tech. I'm also gender non-binary, so I know what it's like to be an invisible minority in tech. On the other hand, I have a long list of privileges. I'm very white, mostly able-bodied, have a pretty solid class background, that kind of thing. And I'm gonna mess up, and I think that's okay, so long as I learn from it. I think I'm probably gonna say something, or already have, that might offend someone. I apologize. And I'll get to that later on in the talk about why messing up is okay. And so why am I talking about this at a DevOps meetup? Well, because DevOps is all about intersectionality and breaking down silos and working together, right? And, you know, HugOps, which is which is kind of silly, but, you know, take it somewhat seriously. We all want to be empathetic. Also, Puppet Labs does a ton of excellent research, and there was a survey that went out recently, and I thought it was kind of depressing that on the last couple of pages, they said they didn't have enough women answer the survey to get any meaningful data to compare salary information between men and women. On the other hand, they said that a fraction of a percent of people identified outside the gender binary. So there was visibility, and that means that was an option on their survey, and that's awesome. And another reason I'm talking about this specifically at this meetup, because there's kind of an alcohol culture here, right? And you know, alcohol can amplify aggression and things like that. Also because kind of this is a room full of men, so it can get very interesting to see. Not entirely. Yeah, it can be interesting to see when I go to one of these meetups whether or not, and I'm sure this is true for a lot of people who are read as female or read as a woman, like, am I going to get hit on or recruited, or how many times? It's kind of a tally, like, just because I'm female, right? So before I get into the meat of my talk and the habit building, I want to define a couple of terms. These are my definition, like my own definitions for these things. So if you ask 5 different trans people what trans means, you'll get 6 different answers. That's what it's like. So I am using trans to mean, or transgender to mean someone whose gender identity does not match up with their biological sex. Cisgender, meaning someone whose gender identity matches with their biological sex, which is a helpful way to not keep saying not to trans. Gender non-binary, like me, someone who identifies outside of the gender binary, not as a man or a woman. Microaggressions, which I think is a really important thing, is like everyday little things that happen that people do that you might not be conscious of. They're like little habits that happen that sort of perpetuate discrimination and aggression, and some examples of that might be like people telling women to smile on the street, something like that, or and then and another thing is ally cookies, which I've heard the phrase feminist cookies before, but I use ally cookies all the time to mean, someone doing something for recognition, not because it's the right thing to do. It's sort of like, okay, you used my correct pronoun. Do you want a cookie? So larger things we can do. I don't want to spend too much time on this because this talk is about habits, right? So one of the things is obviously gender-neutral bathrooms. And this slide is mostly here for later when the slide deck goes up. I do want to spend a second talking about actually hire people. And one of my coworkers was talking recently, yeah, thank you, about how when people hire for culture, when they say they're hiring for culture, frequently they mean they're hiring for personality and whether or not you like that person. And when hiring for culture, you should really be hiring to say, like, what does this person bring to the table? Do they bring something new? And maybe they might make you uncomfortable, but in a good way, like I hope maybe this talk is doing. And something maybe in between a habit and a larger thing that I think deserves its own slide is educate yourself, and don't expect people to educate you. Don't just go up to like the one out trans person at work, because it's usually the one out trans person at work, and say, oh hey, teach me about yourself. What is it like? Because that's just kind of rude. If they put themselves out there and they say, hey, you can come ask me questions, then that's totally great, and go ask them questions. To that end, I have some stuff up on GitHub, a list of resources you can go look at, and Google is your friend. So, now that I'm like 3/4 of the way through my lightning talk, or I don't know how much time I got time. Okay, I'm going to talk about actually building some habits. And to me, one of the most important things, I think, is vocabulary, because it's never just words. And for people that want to say that it's just words, I mean, words are really powerful. And if you're going to tell me that actions speak louder than words, yes, but your words are part of your actions. And so is how you react to when you've been called out on using incorrect words. So, names and pronouns. Respect people's names. My legal name is not Cody, but people call me Cody because that's my name, right? And use people's proper pronouns. And when you introduce yourself in a setting, it helps, even if you're cisgender, to say your pronouns, because that suddenly creates a space where it's okay to be trans, where people can say, hey, my pronoun is something different than what you might think it is. There's also been a lot of chatter lately around the phrase, hey guys, and how folks like to use it as a gender neutral term. And I think it would be great if we could stop pretending that it's a gender neutral term, because it assumes that the default is male. But even more ridiculous than that is when I've been at some meetups or what have you, probably a couple of years ago, and someone would, introduce and say, oh yeah, hey guys, and then look around the room and do this moment of silence, and look at the fact that everyone, and another thing about vocabulary, one other tip, if you're saying, I don't want to be whatever, but I don't want to be racist, but I don't want to be sexist, but just stop talking right there. Just think about why the first half of your sentence was necessary. And as someone who has a lot of trouble not saying things, trust me, it's worth it. And another thing is accept messing up. It will happen. You will probably mispronoun people as you try and get used to gender neutral pronouns. It's not a common thing for people to be out about that right now. So I like to think of it sort of like stepping on some, like if you are in line or something and you accidentally step on someone's foot next to you, right? And like don't argue with the person. If you step on someone's foot, your reaction, I hope, would be something along the lines of, I'm sorry, are you okay? Whereas if you're arguing with someone about like their pronouns, you shouldn't be using those pronouns because it's too difficult for me to remember how to do that. Kind of sounds a lot to me like, well, you shouldn't have feet because it's too difficult for me not to step on them. So basically it makes no sense. And I already sort of went over, don't expect people living it to educate you. And don't do things for ally cookies. Do things because it's the right thing to do. And it's kind of easy to tell when people are doing things for ally cookies. And I had to put this bullet point on the slide, and I really hope I don't have to get into it. But, you know, don't harass people. And remember that harassment does not just include unwanted touching, it includes all kinds of unwanted attention. And if you need more definition on that, please go talk to your HR department. So, this is a DevOps Meetup. I should bring this back to the tech world. I actually honestly don't want to spend too much time on this because there's a wonderful talk online from DevOps Days Boston 2015 by Elliot Murphy, Overcoming Regulatory Burden in Startups, which is all about empathy.
Kind ops.
Which is all about empathy and like how your application or whatever you're building might be used in ways that you're not expecting by people that you're not expecting to use it. And it's a wonderful talk, and I encourage you all to go take a look and go listen. Another thing, Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, I don't know if I pronounced that right at all, otherwise known as the frequency illusion, is now that I have said this to all of you, it will probably be on all of your minds, and you might suddenly start going, oh wait, I wonder what their pronoun is, or what, like, it starts showing up more in your life once you've heard it. And another thing, a technical thing to be done, like when you're building an application, is just the forms. Please, please, please fix the name and gender fields. Gender, we need at least 3 options: male, female, and other. And as much as I hate other because it's literally othering, it's a hell of a lot better than nothing. And if you're saying, oh, well, there's just 2 biological sexes, what if we really need that information? That's not actually true. And another thing is the name areas of a site. And just first and last name fields make a lot of assumptions about names that are not actually true. And so at a bare minimum, preferred name fields, please. So some key points from this is just, you know, everything is connected. So, I mean, Conway's Law, right? I don't remember the exact wording, but organizations which design systems are constrained by the communication structures of their organization. So once we start thinking about this and talking about this, it's going to start coming up and it's going to make our work better. And diverse perspectives, we want diverse perspectives in the workforce. Why would we not? We want to build better products that can reach more people. And culture can be a self-reinforcing thing. Like, you know, hire for culture, really, not just personality. And I hope everyone gets their own key takeaway out of this. To me, really the most important thing is that it's never just words. So please just be very cognizant of your word choice. So thank you very much. And as my Twitter handle, you can come find me, and I would love to hear all of your thoughts. And do I have time for questions?
Yeah, you do.
Cool.
Questions? In the back.
I can just yell it.
Just yell it.
Taking the opposite of the binary, the other theory that I've heard about this is that, like, utterly and completely replacing pronouns with proper names, or proper nouns, I suppose would be. So, like, in your case, it would be Cody and Cody's. Like, the possessive, like, that would literally account for everything. Because at that point, it has absolutely nothing to do with gender. You simply remove gender or non-gender, everything related to that, completely out of the equation now. That doesn't work for forms, obviously. So that's the difficult part. But I guess I'm just curious about, is that a solution that would be entertained, not so much for the forms aspect of it, but for interpersonal communication?
I think it really depends on the person. I do know some people who prefer not to use pronouns. They just want to use their name. They just want people to use their name. And on the other hand, there are some people for whom gender is really, really important. So if you use their name, you might be like taking that away from them. I mean, really just ask someone what they want to be called.
Another question?
Not a question, but a statement to your point about forums. For anybody who's looking for a more in-depth treatment, there's a great talk by Karina C. Zona about schemas for the real world. Look it up.
We'll post it.
I can yell too. You know,
Okay. I'm just gonna
we're all
give you
just
the
yelling
mic.
at this
Just
point. I actually work at a really cool startup, and it's young, and I'm not. That's fine. But a lot of them talk about, talk about those cool cats. So we always talk about cats, and I love that because I'm obsessed with cats. But like, is it too brought down to the fact that like, hey, cool cats, can you give us some feedback? Like, I know that that's way out there, but I mean, how do you feel about just taking away the whole human persona and just saying like, just a group of people in a different way?
I think if everyone in the group thinks that's a fun thing to be called, then I see no reason not to do it.
Well, I know. I mean, I'm totally on board with it. Like, you're awesome. Like, that was a wonderful presentation that you just did. I was really happy. But just on a separate note, like, I think that there is so many people that recognize the difference of what's going on in gender equality. And, my brother's gay. I live in the South End. I'm the happiest. I love everyone. That's my thing. So I think that I love your plight, and I think we should all just be like happy cats. That's kind of that.
Hug ups and happy cats.
Happy cats. Yes.
One more question, since Tobias was a statement.
Do you see a divide, in your personal experience, have you seen a divide between wanting to change culture within a company and ideas about products that are going to customers? So, for example, there's a lot of push to have very simple forms, right? In my social life, I will do that with people. I'll say, these are my pronouns, what are your pronouns? But I can see putting on a form, wanting to minimize the number of fields as much as possible. Like, I love on credit cards where like it guesses that it's a Visa based on the number, and I don't need to plug in that it's a Visa. And I know people do similar things like that, boiling it down. But so it's like it's a trade-off between simplicity and quality. Like, have you had experience with that? And if so, what works?
I'm not sure. So, as much as I talk about forms, I'm actually I'm a sysadmin, so I do sort of backend stuff, so I don't have that much experience with that. But when I see a push in a company towards a culture, like a more inclusive culture, I definitely see it affecting the product in a positive way. Because then people are more inclined to bring that to their product folks, be like, we need to do this now, and I definitely see positive change coming out of that, and there is a balance between simplicity and equality, and I personally am on the side of, well, we should make things equal, right? We should, certain things take precedence.
Don't worry, we are equally discriminated at Starbucks. I mean, trying to give my name to, I'm the most privileged, right? Like white, male, easy to identify, this is pretty straightforward and healthy too, but no, Starbucks.
Yeah, I don't want to keep taking up our time, but there's a difference in what gets written on your cup of coffee and the experience of that every single day of your life.
Yes, and it gets written on my cup of coffee every day of my life, and it's.
I'm locking you out, Anastas. I'm locking you out. Thank you, Cody.
Thank you very much.
Alright, that was our program for tonight. Thanks for coming out. You've seen the organizers for Boston DevOps Days. Come talk to any of us.
And we're going to take everybody, all of the presenters today will have their slide decks, and we'll upload that to the site. So if you guys have information, so that way you'll have a you'll have a platform for any communication and dialogue that you want to have on an individual level. in closing, I just want to thank LogicMonitor, G2 Technologies, and all of our lightning round presenters for bringing a lot of great content, a lot of hard discussions to the table. And I hope that you as the members are able to take some of these valuable content back to your organization to help in solving a lot of the problems. So, in closing, thank you very much, guys. We're all about the community. We're all about the content. Any feedback, I repeat, any feedback that you guys have for Dustin or myself on like what you want to be talking about in future events or how you felt the format is, please provide us that information. Just ping us individually off the meetup site, or if you want, you can find us online very easily. That information is hugely valuable. In closing, I want to call Glenn up, CEO of G2, for final closing. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you guys so much for coming out. We love having this group here. This is our first big event of the year. We've been anxious and waiting for it, and you guys made it awesome. It's fantastic. Thank you guys, everybody, so much. All right, thanks.
Thank you.